So today I'm joined by Simon Farrell. Hello, Simon.
Hello.
Uh, I'm a Farrell. I've got a great grandmother who was a Farrell from Limerick, which is
Oh, awesome.
might be a coincidence, but we may be related. I don't know. Um, so I came across you the other day, Simon, and I saw this rant that you did on Facebook, and I was like, "This is just brilliant," and so I wanted to chat to you. And I was thinking this morning about, what it's like being a conspiracy theorist. I hate to do that or use that term, but that's the way we get labelled. In 2020, because because you've been at it a long time by the looks of it. Let's start with that. When did you first sort of realise things weren't right with the world?
To be honest, it was a whimsical comment by my art teacher. I mean, to be honest, I bet if I don't even know if he's still alive, but I bet if the question was kind of put to him, he probably wouldn't even realise it was him that started it. He basically just said, "Oh yeah, the 3 buildings that went down on 9/11," and I was like,
3?
Yeah. I was like, okay. And he didn't even expand on it. It was just such a whimsical comment. And I was like, oh, right, okay. So I sacked my usual lunchtime football and all the rest of it off and went to the computers, which were like hamster-driven computers back then. So it was like, went on there, waited forever for it to finally load up. And then I saw how it was referred to as the Solomon Building. The Solomon Brothers building, and I was like, okay, and then came across that now famous footage of the BBC reporting it being collapsed before, but this was way before any sort of like YouTubers had got hold of it and edited the footage to add their own interpretations, etc. And when they said it, I found a blueprint of Manhattan and was looking at it and then realised just how many World Trade Center buildings there were and was like, oh, God, I'd never heard of this, but I'd had family who had even been up in the towers. So it was kind of one of them where I was like, oh, wow, okay. So then when I saw that BBC footage, I was like, hang on a minute. But being of the age that I was, that sort of like conspiracy, if you will, was fresh. I didn't know what to make of it. I was just like, oh, that's weird. End of, back to chasing girls, playing football and all the rest of it. I didn't really give it much thought. And then as time started to sort of like go on, it was just little things, like all the architects who came out, all the wives of firemen and everything. And, it was all like the sort of the little movements that got made as a result of it. I just started like listening to what they had to say, listening to these architects and, scientists who were saying, well, there's a bit of a problem here with regards to the physics and X, Y, and Z. So then I think it was atypical of a lot of people who, 9/11 woke them up really. And so that really is how it all started. Right?
So has it affected your life over the last 15 years?
Well, I mean, it's for the first, yeah, I'd probably say, I mean, because 9/11 was 19 years ago. Is it 2000? Yeah, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'd probably say, yeah, for 15 years, when it all started, like all the information just comes through, like so many people start it. It's information overload, it's sensory overload. It's all the dots start connecting, and when you see one, you see another, and then it's just like a rushing and overwhelming sense of all this information coming at you at once, and you're trying to sort of understand it, digest it, and it's very overwhelming. And like a lot of new conspiracy theorists, they just go 100 miles an hour because they can't contain the sheer vast amount of information. You've just got to share it. But again, you come across as the stereotypical tinfoil hat wearing lunatic when you're just firing all the information out at somebody, especially somebody who doesn't see it. So you kind of create this persona of the stereotype that they created, which is you're crazy, you're just mad and all the rest of it. So, you know, it probably took a good 3 or 4 years to kind of like make as much sense as I could of all the information. And kind of, I mean, at one point my bedroom was like something out of a movie. You know, I had post-it notes, I had like pins in the wall with string leading to stuff, and it just filled one of my walls. And kind of putting all this stuff together, and eventually when, you know, YouTubers came out and people started to get a platform for this, it was because it can take over your life, and you view everything with such skepticism and suspicion, and it's very like it drowns you almost, and what sort of you lose yourself because you're no longer the person you perceive the world as prior to seeing all this information. So, you know, it's it's the easiest way to ruin a dinner party, and like I ruined.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it comes from the sense of, you know, because you care, because you want people to be aware of, you know, I can't say that any conspiracy theorist knows the full plan, you know, cross the T's and dot the I's, but because you're like, oh my God, this, you know, could potentially be this, you need to check this out and you need to have a look at it, and, you know, what do you think? But again, because everything's going 100 miles an hour in your head, they don't even have time usually to look at the first bit before you're firing so much information. So I've learned how to engage with people a lot better, and sort of draw them in. And 9 times out of 10, it's because they're denying their own senses to make sense of something that is nonsensical, i.e. like what's going on with the world today. Even the most hardened of sort of anti-conspiracy theorists are starting to go, well, they've got a bloody point here. Well, I mean, what you know, what is this? This is madness. But again, the problem is because there's so many conspiracy theories, people sort of don't know how to organize it. So, for example, and you know, there's some conspiracy theories I believe, there's some that I don't. But, you know, if you go from sort of saying, hey, there's a bit of corruption that we can kind of prove with regards to the government, and you go from that straight to Illuminati aliens, you're just going to lose somebody instantly, because you have to see the trail. You can't just suddenly go, well, this is what it is, and you've got to believe this, which I agree when people say, well, show me the evidence, show me the, you know, what your findings are. The problem is that, one, we've got the system working against us because they don't want this information to be heard. So there's I mean, thank God for screenshotting and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Because it would make you, you know, it'd put a cherry on top of the cake of, well, where's your evidence? And then when you show somebody, they go, well, where did you get that from? And you say, well, I got it years ago when I had to, but it doesn't exist anymore. So you could have made it up. And it's like, Jesus, it's like, well, yes, I could have made it up. You're forever in this paradox of trying to, you know, pass on your, in essence, pearls of wisdom with a forever reference as to where you got this information, which I agree. You know, I think there should be sources and so on and so forth. But when you're on the receiving end of a barrage of, you know, show me, show me, show me, and you do, and they don't want to take that, it's like, well, then I can't help you out. If you're not going to entertain this, I'm not saying you have to see it and instantly go, wow, that's it, I'm converted, for want of a better word. I simply want you to look at it and go, okay, let's have a look and let's see what they've got to say. And at the end of it, at the very least, you can't say there's something very suspicious going on. Then I'm sorry, then your judgment is totally beyond repair, because I always try to look at it from both perspectives, which is hard because when you are awake, it's hard to pretend you're not. But, you know, I try to, in how to engage with people and say, look, try this, da, 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 and then see it from this perspective now. And I probably say 9 out of 10 people that I speak to, you know, they at least go, yeah, to be fair, yeah, you've got a bit of a point. And it's like, hurrah, that's fine. Know when to leave it be and let them stew over the information. The problem is, and with all respect to them, new conspiracy theorists go, right, okay, now here's flat Earth, and it's like, oh God, it's like, you know what I mean? So there's ways of doing it.
I do. I know, the reason I want to contact you is because I believe strongly that it is down to people standing up and speaking out and using the tools like the internet to do that. And I'm seeing more and more people. I mean, the great thing about this pandemic has been that has been that, from my point of view, I'm just watching people waking up and sharing. So yes, they do go rushing in and say, oh, this. But I'm like, thank God, this is amazing. You know?
Sure, definitely.
It's amazing. But I think, the way that you communicate is amazing as well. And I think it's a good point here, if you don't mind. I'm going to share the rant that you did on Facebook the other day with everybody watching, because it is worth seeing. So if you don't mind sitting and looking at yourself for the next 2 minutes, we'll pop it on.
No problem.
All right, here we go.
Yo, what's good, guys? Real quick, I put up a poll earlier, well, about 5 minutes ago, and for some reason, Facebook is blocking the content. Just don't ask me why. It is just retarded, but that's Facebook. So basically, I thought, well, fuck it, I'll do if it's going to play silly buggers, I'll do a video instead. Right, I need to put a question to everybody. Basically, yesterday I got approached by an independent journalist asking if I would want to be part of an interview that discusses the mistrust with government and the psychology behind it. She just approached me randomly out of the blue. I mean, I'm always dead sort of like, who sent you? Anyway, and obviously more so with a journalist. But, we talked for a little bit and, I kind of got a bit of a background. She sent me the links. I did my thing. I sent that to my people. They looked into it. And she seems very much legitimate. She seems very honest. She used to work for Vice. She did appear one time as a guest on the BBC, but hey, there's a lot of decent people appeared on the BBC. It's ultimately the BBC that are twat. Now, she is not affiliated to the mainstream media. She is an independent journalist, and this particular piece is going to get wrote up in the Metro. And she just wants to she wants to interview me about my views on the psychology behind the mistrust with government. So I am putting it to you, the people, because I am always and always will be about the people. And it is your voice and your, it's for you guys why I do this. Don't do it for anything else. Don't do it for fame. Don't do it for notoriety. Don't do it for money. Don't do it for none of that bollocks. I basically am doing everything I'm doing for you. So I'm putting this out there to you. Do you want me to do the interview? Yes or no? It's obviously easier now that I've done it in the video because you can actually comment and expand on as to why yes or why no and etc. But like I say, the facts are this. This is not a mainstream media journalist. She has worked for Vice and she has appeared on the BBC once. This is a write-up for the Metro, to which this particular piece will be commissioned to them, and if they take it on board, then fantastic. She said to me that she's never had a story or a piece killed off, so it's a pretty much certainty that it will be writ up in the Metro. So there we go. There's the facts of the situation, people. Get voting.
Now, that's the reason I showed that one instead of the rant the other day is because I just think it's amazing the way that you're communicating with people. Because you're getting feedback from people, and I'm wondering whether are these people that you know personally, or have you got a broader tribe now of people?
It's a combination of both really. There's people that I know personally, and there's people that I probably will never meet. But I try and get sort of like, I suppose, an eclectic mix of people, people who have more conservative views, people who more have liberal views, and the whole shebang, because that is the context of our societies, whether we like to admit it or not. We like to sort of believe the world is almost personified by our own perception and everybody agrees with what we agree with. But ultimately, the system in which we live, or supposedly supposed to live as a democracy, is ultimately, for me, the best way to do things. At the same time, as far as decisions are being made. Now, I've seen people in the past who have kind of, you know, done interviews, done the actual mainstream media way, and it's just come back and bit them on the ass. And I give them the pre-warning and said, you know how it's going to go, how it's going to go down X, Y, and Z, but ultimately it's totally up to you. And the mainstream, but again, the main point here is the mainstream media. And I said to everybody, if it was the BBC or if it was YTV, Channel 5, or whoever who would message me, different comment, I wouldn't have even got past explaining what it had just been. No, end of, on your back. I do not trust what you're doing. But as far as we're all in our own right, independent journalists. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we are, right? And it's what you said earlier was really interesting. By the way, I'll put a link to your Facebook page down here so people can go and see your other stuff, because it's just honestly brilliant. What you said earlier about when you've got all of this, I had a very similar. I was laughing at some of the things you say because I relate to it, right? Because people say, I had a message actually about half an hour ago from a good friend saying she just watched this video that I sent her, which was, I don't know if you've seen it, it's JCK, it's a woman in Australia that's done this remote viewing on what's going on underground in Australia. And it's just a mind-blowing video, which she's sort of describing this kind of hell under earth with demons there and they're devouring these children. And it's just like horrific, but very, very interesting. And she came back and said to me, well, if that's really happening and Trump's, how are they getting rid of these demons? And if these demons are coming out, what's going to happen? It's just going to be chaos. And you're like, where do you start? Because you as you said, you've got millions of references, but you don't keep them all in a file because everything's going all every day. I mean, at the moment, it's just crazy. It's consuming. And one thing that just amazes me is how there are people out there that are just not interested. Mm. So I had another friend on the phone this morning, and I sent him a poem that I'd done, and he said, very interesting, your new religion that you're in. And I was like, it's not. It's like, it's not a fucking religion. But I can't. He couldn't get past. He said, I just can't get past the fact that Trump is. He just doesn't like people of a certain color. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, so we become the voices that want to, what is it about people like us that want to tell people? I think that they can't understand that. They can't understand why you want to be explaining stuff to them. Do you ever come across that?
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, there's like varying levels of like a cognitive dissonance, and when you sort of like create your own, it's almost like, say, putting an entire Lego model together and then someone who you don't know coming in and going, you've done that wrong, and you're going, well, I haven't, it looks perfectly well. You go, but, and then start pointing out the flaws and the wrongs. Your automatic human instinct is to go, well, piss off. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like who the hell are you? You know what I mean? You start telling me all this, but the problem is, I think, again, it deals with approach, is especially on some of like the real in-depth, i.e., whether it bases on a spiritual level, religious as, as externally of the man-made conception as possible, but just call it spiritualistic. A spiritualistic sense is you have people who totally and utterly deny that it is even a thing. And fine, I have no problem. I've got plenty of atheist mates. And I talk, just as sort of like normally as I do with my religious friends. And that could be Muslim, that could be Buddhist, Sikh, Christian, and the whole shebang. And the problem is, for me, is that I see how people see things. And when, like, say, oh, I'm Christian, like, I automatically class myself as a Christian. But I know what people hear is, I believe in everything that the church, Catholicism, does.
Yeah.
I know that's what they hear. So they make this preconceived judgment before I've even had time to sort of delve into that. So I never approach my talks and my things from a spiritual angle because it's a subjective perspective and opinion. So I can't expect it's like speaking Chinese to a Russian who doesn't know Chinese. They're not going to understand the perspective of which you are trying to drive home the point. And when it comes down to the crunch of it all, I personally believe there is a spiritual battle going on, but it resides within us. It's the same principles of people, you know, going, you know, and I know it's ironic because I wear a crucifix, but, you know, who kneel down in front of a gold crucifix and are kissing it. And it's like, is that where God is right there? You know, it's the same thing with this. It's just a symbol because I enjoy the way it looks. But I know God's not in that. It's in here. Well, it's in me. It's in here. Yeah. It's in us all, and it's a personal, subjective feeling. But because so much crap has been done in the name of God, it's got nothing to do with God. God is not involved in this shit show in any way, shape, or form. It's, you know, the principle of God is an unraveling continuum. And when people like go, you know, because they have this ideology of, oh, it's just an old man sat on a cloud looking down. And it's like, you know, you're still thinking like a child is being told, you know what I mean? And to move on from that, when you engage with people, you have to get this understanding of, I'm not trying to convert anybody. I'm not trying to make anybody think the way that I think or think in any particular way. I'm simply saying, open up your heart and mind to the possibility of everything. Because if you stay pigeonholed and segregated, that's what draws out the worst of us: suspicion, anger, resentment, and all the things that are ultimately driving us apart. Whereas if you take a chance, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, you know, we have the key to create the ultimate utopia. It's impossible. It is absolutely impossible. Human beings cannot create the ultimate utopia. That is a God thing. But we can certainly strive for better, and we strive for better individually by being the best person we can be. And it's the simple fundamentals of ultimately what religion tried to be. But religion balls everything up because it's mankind's interpretation that's bollocksed it through greed and power and all that nonsense. So when people engage with others about, i.e., you know, like demons or, you know, what something that could be perceived as being quite a fantasism is, you have to come with the perspective that what you know, everything you know, could be wrong. And it's the same for people who put the faith in science, maths, and all the man-made languages that we can use to communicate with. I use science and maths all the time. I quite easily use it. The problem is when you close your mind off to the other possibilities, and unfortunately, atheists became the new religious nuts. They became the, oh my God, you serious? You believe in God? Are you mad? Are you crazy? And it's like, why? Why is it crazy to believe in intelligent design? The vast majority of scientists admit that Earth is intelligently designed, which indicates a creator. They don't know what it is. They can't even come close to what it is. But when you start arguing upon what their principles are, or should I say, the foundations of their principles, it's so far off. So if anyone starts chatting to me about evolution and the Big Bang and all this, that, and the other, that isn't me being dismissive of science. It's simply saying that science is so wrong, it's beyond belief. But the establishments upon which they are based are too well funded, too well mediated, too well regulated, and all the rest of it. You know, imagine what we as conspiracy theorists could do with an annual budget of
That's a great idea.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
we could make the world believe whatever it is we wanted them to believe.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And I'm not saying for upheaval and, you know, like archaic revolution, bloodshed on the street. I'm simply saying, let us just culminate every idea and stop censoring things because it's seen as offensive, or it doesn't suit a narrative, or it doesn't have some sort of weighted sort of drive behind it. You know, why can't things be open up for discussion? Why do they have to be censored? Why does there have to be this continuous design of the direction we're almost being led to go under the guise of we're free and we have freedom of choice and all the rest of it? Well, we don't have it at all, but it's been done in such a clever way, it's so impossible to break free from. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And, you know, terms like conspiracy theorist or anti-vaxxer or anti-Semite and all of these words that are deliberately created by the agencies that, you know, keep us from the truth, immediately make us very easy to pigeonhole and segregate and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I've found really interesting about Q is Q just leaves breadcrumbs, right? And then allows people to go, you know, somebody said to me this morning that Q was a far-right conspiracy theorist cult, and just repeating the mainstream media stuff. And I was like, have you ever actually read the posts? Because if you go and read the posts, he's leaving clues, and the clues over time have proven to come true, and it's mind-blowing. And that's going back to the analogy you used for the Lego. Instead of telling them that's wrong, you just sort of let them find it out themselves, and then they go quietly, oh, and then they put it together in the right way. But then there's always this thing about, so what's so special about you, Mark? What's so special about you, Simon? Why do you think you know everything? And then you go into these chats about, well, how many hours you've spent looking at it, and then there's this urge to tell people and communicate, which I do think is a spiritual thing. I feel very compelled to do what I'm doing. And, you know, I'm doing it on YouTube now. I've been doing it on Facebook for years. I've done it face to face with people. I've lost lots of friends. I've been attacked. I even got attacked yesterday in the shop by an old man asking me why I wasn't wearing a mask. But then I went to Dublin yesterday on the protest, a freedom protest, the Yellow Vests in Dublin. And I took a couple of my kids. And my God, the energy was just incredible. I mean, I'm getting a buzz thinking about it now. It was just incredible. And the divide is so, it's right in our faces now, right? You know, literally on our faces. You know, because there were like 20,000 people going down the street, being watched by people on the side of the street with their masks on, like this, looking at us. And we're shouting, take off your masks, take off your masks. And they're just looking at us like, and then, you know, it's just extraordinary how this year is really. I mean, have you read Q? Do you believe this, the Great Awakening? Do you subscribe to that kind of thinking?
I'll be honest. I don't really, in all honesty, have an opinion on it. It's the same with anything that comes from externally of what I can control. That doesn't mean I don't take on board things that's happened. You know, I've looked at every single post that Q has ever put out. I've looked at people who are very sort of like closely, you know, like the whole link with like JFK Jr., Trump, the whole shebang. I can see the whole picture. When I say don't buy, it's not that I don't buy the information that comes out from Q or whoever. I will take on board information and analyze it and all the rest of it. And if it warrants, express my opinion, or if it doesn't, I can quite happily keep it to myself. You know, I'm not trying to attention seek for my opinion. But my ethos with it all is that what goes on wherever that cannot directly affect me or suddenly change my life or the people I'm trying to help out right now, then that's all well and good. I will hear you, I'll listen to you, I'll take on board, no problem at all. but I'm personally not going to subscribe to something that ultimately I am not in control of. So when people say, like, you know, it's almost like become a bit of a mantra, and I'm not trying to sort of impugn anybody that thinks this, but when they're constantly going, trust the plan, trust the plan, trust the plan, and I'm like going, and that's fine, but what if the plan turns out to be absolute dog shit and you've just got, and I'm not saying it will, I'm simply saying, what if? Be prepared for all eventualities. And, you know, depending on who it is that I'm kind of speaking to, you know, I've had it with people who are hardcore Black Lives Matter, and we've come to a perfectly fine consensus because we've aired it out and we've talked about it and all the rest of it. When people get so tunnel visioned, and it's the same principle with the Lego house, you know, they believe in something so truly, and especially when you have what seems to be almost a savior, call it Q, call it Trump, call it whatever, people can then negate their entire responsibility and put all their faith into one thing. When in actual fact, why don't you spend some of that time going to a soup kitchen or doing something that's actually going to progress your neighborhood, your society, your whatever, rather than just sitting back and going, oh, well, Trump will sort it, or this leader will sort it, or Q will sort it, or whatever. So that's my take on it. Some of my closest are hardcore Q anons. It's no problem to me. And that's why I mix with everybody, because I think it's important to, and finding that galvanizing point in all areas and bringing it together to go, it doesn't matter if you don't agree with them and they don't agree with you, and so on and so forth. When you break back what every single last movement is about, we just want peace, love, no corruption, end of evil, end of pedophiles and all that. It's very, very simple what we want. And it's systemically true of everything that tried to be a good for humanity, religion, all this politics. It all started as a good idea because the principles of mankind from your soul are very simple, like those things I've mentioned. The problem is somebody comes in and goes, well, I can do it better. And then they start to do it, and then it makes a balls up because we're all human and we all make mistakes. And then someone goes, well, yeah, but I'll do it better. And it just creates a snowball effect of crap that builds up and builds up and builds up. Whereas if we just break apart all this bollocks, this like, oh, this race had it worse, and these type of people had it worse, or I've had it worse, or whatever. Who gives a shit? Just stop tit for tatting back and forth over and over again to the point of all we're doing is just arguing. You know, we're going to end up in bloody, you know, jail cells, concentration camps, however you want to foresee it, and we're still going to be sat there going, well, black people or white people had it better, and it's just like, who gives a shit? Look around, falling apart, and you just still want to chat about this shit. And like I said, you know, I've had this conversation so many times, but, you know, because the point is now it is more time to do away with all this divisional segregation than ever, because there needs to be people that can stand as a unificated personification of the people's power to go, you know, oi, we can see you and we can see what's going on. We are not stupid. But again, there has to be, you know, an organization. There has to be, like, not a hierarchy in essence, because I don't want to perceive it as being a dictatorship, but, you know, there has to be leaders, there has to be sergeants, there has to be, you know, workers. It is the best formulation. The problem is that so many areas of our establishments and our societies are corrupted by power-hungry, driven people. And it's not saying that nobody. This is the problem with my brain. It's just so much flying all over.
That was great.
Place, you know what I mean? We can always aspire to be better. We should just never propose to have the ultimate plan, because nobody does.
Yeah, it is, you know, having this savior idea is something I'm very wary of. And I did get a little bit sucked into at one point thinking, yes, this is looking good. We're going to be okay. And I'm like, hang on a minute. You can't ever do that. I think you're absolutely right. And I love your description on your Facebook page: Illuminati killer, fuck the N.W.O, Unity Matters, hashtag, and the World People's Council co-founder. What's the World People's Council, Simon?
So the World People's Council was an idea that a few other group admins and myself came up with, purely to do kind of what I really described before, is saying that you can have, you know, a group that's like anti-5G, you can have a group that's anti-vaccination, you can have flat earthers, you can have whatever. But when you boil all this down to those key principles, that is where we find our unification. So we came up with the idea. It's more of an idea than it is a group. And that was what I wanted to kind of perpetuate with it. And it's like the same with Anonymous. The true notion of Anonymous is an idea. It's not a group.
Yeah.
It's not a group. It's never been a group. And that's how it lost its way, per se. Because it got marketed, it got merchandised, it got the whole... I mean, I've got an Anonymous T-shirt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it became, again, the symbolism of it was what it was supposed to represent, which was the fact that it is not the system that controls us. Remember who it is you work for. And that notion, every normal kind of non-sociopathic person could get behind. The problem is that because anybody could be anonymous, they then claimed to be anonymous. Do you understand what I mean?
I do, because it goes from being... I mean, there are people that say that Anonymous was infiltrated, but it doesn't really matter, does it? It was a great idea at the beginning. I thought it was great because it was just like, you know, you can't see us coming, and there's many of us, and I thought, yeah, brilliant. But I kind of lost interest in it, I don't know, a while ago. So yeah, I mean, and you can't kill an idea though, and that's what I like about that. Is there a place where people can find out more about that, or is it just on your Facebook page?
Somebody made a group. I can't even remember who it was who actually made it. It was one of the admins. It just the People's World Council Facebook group. But like I say, it's one of those, because with groups, I think groups are absolutely fantastic ideas, and but because of the way that all the social medias were shutting down all these groups and pages and so on and so forth, it was a way to almost appear divided, but ultimately we're united. So rather than, I mean, I think it was Thanos from Australia, his 99% group, I think it was, had like over 100,000 people got shut down, and, you know, just like that. And, you know, it should come as no surprise, because that's ultimately what they're doing. So the point that I, you know, sort of put to people with the, I was actually in the middle of a live when I suggested the idea, made a room, and it started kicking off in the room as I was doing it. And I'm watching people like going, oh yeah, whatever, yeah, fuck this, I'm out of here, left the group. I'm like, oh my God, I was like, you kidding? Like, we haven't even started yet, and we're already...
It's like that scene in Life of Brian with John Cleese, where there's like the People's Front of Judea, and then they're just arguing over the name. I think it's the irony of being human. And also, you can't, it's like there's a massive call and demand. I'll get messages every day saying, join me on this new platform, and you look at them and it's like, yeah, it's great, but we're just preaching to the converted, and secondly, there's nobody on them. So, you know, you've got to be on Facebook, you've got to be on Twitter, you've got to be on YouTube until they take you off. That's where the people are.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've said to people all along, because I try and entertain everybody, you know, but again, you know, I mean, I wake up to like so many messages every day. I spend most of my days just literally searching through the messages. but I'm trying to find those sparks of ideas. Not, you know, I have seen every YouTube video there is to do with conspiracy. Do you know what I mean? I've seen them all, and it's like with the Out of Shadows thing.
Yeah.
Like, yes, very well put together, very well done. But if you break down the actual information and be honest about, you know, yes, there's a different perspective as far as who it was. So, for example, the UK one, where you had that inspector, it's like, you can find his testimony. It's just not on a YouTube video. And I've heard it. But again, I'm not refuting that people don't watch it. By all means, if you're coming in to this thing now and new, then great. It's a great culmination of information for you to be able to digest easily. But for someone like me, without sounding bloody self-important, but for someone like me, it's nothing new. It is literally nothing new. And I don't want to come across as being a prick and keep going, I know, I've seen it, I know. But the truth is out. Yeah. And at this point, you know, we need to be formulating ideas and plans for the future, not, oh, have you seen this? Yeah, I have. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
It's like, well, so what? So we've both seen it. We're going to agree on everything. But then what? You know, the same way like preaching to the converted. I talk to my people all the time, you know, to kind of make sure everybody's all right, you know what I mean? And go, right, okay, you know, is everything cool here? Is everything happening there? What's going on? What's the latest? What's all the rest of it? And, you know, all my people kind of throw everything at me, but at the same time, I still have to spend a lot of my time ciphering through so much stuff. And then when people like go, oh my God, have you seen this? And throw it at me, I still, even now, 20 years later, still like, oh shit, what is it? What they found? And then I'm like, oh, I'm like, God, you know, it's the latest celebrity who threw up an Illuminati sign. I'm just going, oh, I don't care. Yeah. At this point, I couldn't give a shit what celebrities do what. Celebrities are distractions. It's like, just if one thing anybody who's watching, forget about the fucking celebrities, please. For the love of God, forget about them. Don't even give them a second moment's thought. They are purely just distraction. You know, we need to be getting together to formulate ideas based on what we are currently seeing going on in the world. And again, you have to be careful how you phrase things, but, you know, it's like if police went totally tyrannical, and I'm talking about, you know, doing the worst of the worst, unruly and all the rest of it, what happens? Do you know what I mean? What do we do? Because it's too late when it's happening.
Yeah.
And, you know, trying to organise within chaos is just bloody awful, you know.
Yeah.
We need to, while there's a bit of sort of like calm, I suppose, come together and go, right, you know, what do we do in this eventuality? At the same time, you have to get the people with most people's sway to bring people around to the idea of this. And it's a hell of a job. It's like running a country almost. As much as I can't stand politicians and all the rest of it, I do not envy their job. I wouldn't want to run a bloody country. Jesus, it's like, it's so complicated and you cannot please everybody.
Well, I was going to nominate you for Prime Minister.
No.
So are you optimistic or pessimistic? Where do you think we're going to actually go in the next 12 months?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I know people can do stupid shit, but I always have faith in humanity and mankind. I really do. It doesn't mean we won't keep doing more stupid shit, but I try to remain forever optimistic because it's just naturally within me to be that way. But I'm not blind to just how wrong and how messed up it really could go, you know what I mean? And I live, you know, I have the reserve of, you know, if, like I say, if, you know, the bloody forcing people to have immunisation, or it becomes mandatory, should I say. I always try and stay like a mental step ahead of what I think is going to happen. And that's been kind of misconstrued in a few ways, because some people have thought, like with protesting and so on and so forth. I've been to protests and I will continue to go to protests. You know, unfortunately, I don't have the finances all the time. You know, I'm a father of 4 to split amongst my family to be there all the time. You know, if I didn't have a family, it'd be a whole different matter. This revolution would be kicking off a hell of a lot. They're bloody lucky I've got a family. I'd let me tell you that.
Yeah, I say I've got 5 kids as well. I mean,
so you know
yeah.
know how time constraining everything is.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but I have, you know, I can see where it's going to go completely tits up. I can also see where it can potentially be redeemed. It's just culminating the think tanks and the smart people and the skilled people and everything, and utilizing our, you know, our skills in order to better what potentially is to come. So, you know, if you are, you know, if you're a good talker, say for example, and you've got a gift of the gab and all the rest of it, you know, go preach this to people. Go and say, hey, look into this. You know, if you are great with media or whatever, hook up with a designer and come up with something. Utilize your skills, because I get that everybody has their own individual lives. I get that. But if the worst case scenario was to happen, none of that will matter anymore.
Yeah.
You need to kind of live with that. If I did nothing, you know, then fine, but then you've got to live with that forever. And
well, exactly. Well, that's why we're doing this. That's why we're having this chat, for exactly that reason. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you and listening to what you've got to say. You are an amazing communicator, and you're on the money with lots of things there. And I'd love to do it again in the future. And I'm sure we could talk for hours, but most people haven't got more than an hour on a YouTube video. But thank you very much, and let's chat again.
Yes, most definitely. Brilliant.
Thanks, Simon. Take care.
Cheers, man.
Bye.